Hey everybody, Coldar here. Today we are looking at a guide for heroic Imperial Vizier Zor'lok in Heart of Fear. So this boss is kind of a pain. He's easy in the first few phases and then becomes real pain in the ass in the last phase. So most of this stuff we'll talk about the last phase, but overall I'll just go over the various platforms, how you handle those in the transitions, and then we'll talk about the final phase in a bit of detail. So let's get started. Now, the big difference between heroic and normal is that when you defeat the Vizier on a given platform, you get him low enough health to transition, he will spawn an echo of himself. It's like a remainder copy of his previous self that inherits the particular special ability that that platform had. So right here you can see the echo of Force and Verve has just spawned as the boss transitions away. So essentially this means that you will need 2 tanks for this fight because you have to tank both of these creatures, and you have to split your DPS and healing in some way so that you can manage both platforms simultaneously. So that's sort of the first challenge of this encounter, is figuring out how to split things up so that you can handle whatever's happening. Otherwise, the big difference is in the last phase as well. So when you reach the final phase, always at the same time, the boss will spawn another echo, and this will be an echo of attenuation. So it's the echo that was from this platform. And this will be active throughout the entire final phase, and you have to deal with that in some way, just like you did on this particular platform as well. So we'll cover that one when we get there. Let's go ahead and get started with the first platform and then the first echo that we saw. As the encounter begins, Vizier will always land on the Force and Verve platform first. So that's the right one as you come in the room, or southwest on the map. So your raid can actually be situated on this platform at the start of the fight and just DPS right away. Now, he uses all his normal abilities, just like in the normal version. So he'll use Inhale and Exhale, as well as Force and Verve, which is inherent to this platform. So there you can see Force and Verve happening. And on Heroic, there are 4 bubbles for protection. Each of them will protect a maximum of 3 players. So you have more than enough to cover everyone. So the easiest thing to do is to figure out a split based on the bubble spawn order. That's how we do it. So they don't all spawn at once, they spawn in order. So the first one is right under the boss, the second one is out from that a little bit, next one is out from that, and so on. So we have our melee and our tank in the middle one, the first one, and then our healers and someone in the second one, a few casters in the third one, and then the rest in the fourth. Something like that. So that works really well. Now, when you get the boss to 80% and he transitions, he will fly away and spawn the Force and Verve. Now, Force and Verve, as you can see, is the echo, so it still needs to be tanked. So you'll need 2 tanks, as I mentioned. So our Paladin tank is picking him up here. And all of your remaining DPS and at least 1 healer should remain behind on this platform. The only other people to move away should be 1 tank and 1 healer who need to follow the boss to the second platform. So we'll get to that in a second. But if you look at the transition here, you'll see that our monk tank, who was on the boss, and our paladin healer are going across because they have to pick up the boss. Everyone else remains here. The goal here is just to burn the echo down as fast as possible. That's why all DPS remain here. Now, the issue here is that this echo of Force and Verve uses Force and Verve. You can see it cast there. But the problem is the bubbles are split, 2 of them near the boss, the main boss Vizier, and 2 of them near the echo. So this means with 8 players over here, if you only send 1 healer and 1 tank to the boss, that means 2 people will be unprotected by the bubbles. So you need to plan accordingly for this. Now, how you do this is sort of up to you, but the way we chose to do it was to have one DPS player that has a cooldown, in our case a Shadow Priest with Dispersion. He stays out of the bubble, and then our tank, our Paladin tank, is also very survivable, so he stays out. The other 6 players can split up 3 and 3 in the 2 bubbles on our side. Likewise, you can't see it from here, but our Monk tank and Paladin healer can also use the bubbles on their side. The problem is they are on the Attenuation platform with the boss, and often attenuation is occurring around the same time. So it can be very difficult to manage both of those. Our Paladin healer almost always uses his bubble to survive those. And similarly, our Monk tank uses Zen meditation, which is virtually like a bubble. So it works very well. Other than that, this Force and Verve Echo is very simple. So as long as you have people that can survive on the boss platform until you kill this, you'll only get 1 Force and Verve from the Echo unless your damage is very low. But with 2 healers, it's pretty easy to kill it in time. And we don't really use any cooldowns over here. As a Monk healer, I'm more suited to raid healing, so that's why I'm on this platform rather than the other one. And so I just do, basic Thunder Focus Tea to spread my heals and then just save up my chi and heal people up. So that's not too bad. So then everyone crosses over, and you'll probably have discs active at this time, so be careful of those. So you may have seen our warrior in grid got clipped by some discs coming over here. So just be very careful if there are active discs when you're running across, and take it slow and steady. Just be more cautious than just trying to rush over, basically. So you can see right away that the attenuation platform is quite different on Heroic. You still have the normal discs that you have to dodge, but then you also have these new green orbs called sonic pulses. These are very dangerous. They do about 300,000 physical damage when you touch them. So hitting one of those is a good way to kill yourself right away. However, they don't spawn at the same pattern or frequency of the discs. So if you look straight down on attenuation when it's being cast, you'll notice that there are 5 sets or 5 arms of the yellow discs that spin around from the boss's orientation. And the normal strategy, of course, is to go in between one of those pairs of arms and just follow it around in a circle. You kind of create this circular pattern, and then you originate back to your starting position. The problem is that there are then these 3 arms of the green pulses that are also created, but these arms are not synced up the same speed as the discs. And in fact, each arm has its own rotational speed. So if you look to the right of me, that arm of green pulses to my right is the slow one. You can see it's actually slower than the discs that are moving out. However, one of the green pulse arms is the fast version. It will go faster than discs, and then one is about the same speed in between. So the trick here is to figure out how to properly maintain that safe position between the normal yellow disc arms without being in danger of hitting one of the fast green arms. And through a lot of trial and error, we basically figured out what determines this. And that is essentially the cardinal direction or the directionality of the room itself. So it's irrelevant which direction the boss is facing or the players or anything like that. It's based purely on the angles around the room from the boss as the center focal point of the animation. So if you look at my position right now, I've got my back to that yellow marker, which is almost directly south of the boss. So again, if the boss is the originating location of these spinning arms, directly south is the safe position that we use to start, no matter where we are with attenuation. So The reason for this is that we discovered there's probably other positions, but 99% of the time, the fast pulse or fast green arm will not be interfering with our safety position here. So you can see here we're going to right side, and you can see that the slow green arm is closest to us there. So we just can all rotate around and safely remain in that position. Likewise, if it's a left direction, again, starting from this position as well, you just go into the gap that's directly presented in front of you, and you can safely rotate around without worry about the green pulse orbs. So the point here is to just keep that same relative directionality relative to the boss. So either in this phase or the final phase, no matter what it is, when you're dealing with attenuation, keep your back to the south relative to the boss, and then you will have a safe opening no matter which direction the attenuation goes in. So now that we know how attenuation works, we'll talk a little bit about the overall platform management and the transition between the second and the third platform, just like we did between the first and the second. So you can see here there's a little bit of craziness going on, which has to do with our paladin healer getting charmed and then having the AI run him over to this platform to attack and kill us because he's crazy like that. But I'll talk about that sort of stuff in a little bit. So you can see here as we start on the second platform, everyone runs into position. Again, we got a marker set out for people, but the basic idea is to keep your back to the southern position relative to the boss. And then when attenuation starts, like it's doing here, no matter which direction it goes, you just go into the gap that's presented to you right in front, and you'll be safe. And then just run around like normal. Otherwise, it's just like you would do the normal difficulty. You're burning the boss down to 60%, and then he'll transition to the third platform. Of course, in Heroic, he'll also leave behind the echo of attenuation on this platform. So dealing with the echo is a little bit more tricky than it is on the first one. You obviously have to leave some players on this platform to deal with it, but unlike the second platform where you don't really need extra people besides the tank and the healer, on the third platform you will very quickly get a convert cast, charming the two players that are over there. And obviously if you only have your tank and your healer over there, that's a wipe very quickly. So you need to sort of split your raid in some manageable way that allows enough players to be on the convert platform to properly handle conversions, while also leaving enough DPS on this platform to deal with the echo. The way we choose to do it is when the echo spawns, all DPS remain on this platform, and they burn the echo as much as they can. However, as soon as the echo does his first attenuation, which you see right here, all of our DPS, save for 2 of our DPS players, will immediately evacuate and run over to the third platform. We found that if they waited until after this attenuation, it was too late. Convert would already have happened, and we'd wipe. So if you're going to have people transfer, the last point that they can go is just before that attenuation. So we have 4 DPS transfer over at the start of that first echo attenuation, which you saw, with 2 DPS remaining behind with our paladin tank and myself as the healer. In our case, we're using our strongest caster dot DPS, so they can sort of run around and do some damage to the echo while they're attenuating. So our Bounce Druid and our Shadow Priest remain on this platform. Then from there, it's just a matter of dealing with the conversions on the other platform with 4 DPS, a tank, and a healer. And I'll talk about conversion a little bit when we get to that platform. But otherwise, these players that are remaining on the echo will do the majority of the damage to the echo. You need to have enough damage over here that you kill the echo within a reasonable time frame before players on the conversion platform have to stop DPS on their boss, and stop the transition. Now, arguably, if you want to say just have one DPS, one tank, one healer on this Echo of Attenuation, there's no reason you couldn't do that. You're definitely going to have to stop DPS on the boss so he doesn't transition before you're ready. You don't want to push him below 40%. But if you want to have more players on that platform able to deal with conversions, there's no reason you can't do that. So, anyway, that pretty much covers the second platform and the transition over to the third. Now, the third platform, where Convert is the main ability, it has a little bit of quirkiness to it. The first thing you should be aware of is that players over here can and will be hit by attenuation attacks, the discs and the sonic pulses as well, because they travel a long ways. So you can see here that our raid marker that's sort of up the stairs a little bit is positioned in this location for two reasons. The first is that it's very far away from the attenuation point where it originates, so most of the discs will not reach those players that are stacked in that location. However, the second reason is to potentially, but not always, prevent issues like you see in this clip with our paladin healer running across the room to attack the Echo of Attenuation group. So the idea is that the players that get charmed would have to travel all the way from their back location here through the boss and then down the stairs and so on. By then they should be attacked or stunned or whatever, and basically aggroed off of that group so that they stay here. The third reason is that being further away from the boss's center is important because people that get broken of charm often take ticks of exhale. Exhale is not an issue on any other platform because the tank just stands in front of everybody. But charmed players, the AI, tend to behave very differently. So they will often start attacking the tank, and when they get broken, they just immediately get exhaled and die because they're half health and pop out or whatever. So there are a number of things you can do to help prevent these issues, most of which we don't really do in this clip. So just pretend that we're doing them. So the first thing you should do is people that get charmed should be taunted by players at range. So both the paladin healer and myself are great at this because we don't have to be up close, and we can taunt players to force them that are charmed to attack us and then back away a little bit. So when they get broken, they're nowhere near the center of the boss. Now, usually we do this on melee DPS because they tend to move around a lot since they have to be in melee range, obviously, to attack. So they'll often be attacking the boss or another melee that's right up front. So like our warrior that would get charmed, we would often taunt him out, or our enhancement shaman. Casters you don't have to worry about as much since they tend to just stand there, even as A-high, and so they're safe. The other issue is obviously sometimes even non-melee DPS will aggro the other group, like our paladin did in this entire clip. So in some situations, you can just let that player go because they will be in the smoke and slowly take damage, eventually breaking themselves out automatically before they even get to the other platform. However, in some bizarre way, you may have seen that our paladin actually got converted again, even though he was all the way across the other side with the attenuation platform. He got converted just as he was broken from the gas. So, terrible luck. But generally speaking, the charms will only target players that are within 40 yards or so of the boss. So, other than that, the third platform is pretty simple. You just really have to manage like I said, the balance between players on this platform and the Echo of Attenuation platform. You'll also notice that we use a Warlock demonic gateway there, which is very handy to transfer over. Again, be careful when you're transferring because the attenuation discs will often be over here as you're coming over. And you'll see, even though I'm the second healer, normally I would not be over here before the echo is killed, but I came over to help out with emergency looking situations because our Holy Paladin got charmed and was not able to help heal. But generally speaking, the tank and the DPS on the attenuation platform for the echo should really not be in danger. The tank on the echo takes very little damage. It's very easy to heal. So, once you bring Vizier to 40%, just like all the other stuff, he will transfer into the final phase. Now, as I mentioned, the majority of the difficulty in this encounter comes in the final phase. You won't have really any trouble reaching the final phase pretty quickly after a few attempts on this fight. But this final part is a real pain. So, the reason for this is essentially that you have the Vizier with all his normal abilities, and you will always get an echo of attenuation at the same time frame, meaning you have to deal with 2 sets of attenuation along with a force and verve and a convert in normal rotation. So I will talk about how we ended up handling this, as you see in the video, and then a few of the other methods that we tried or that work for other raid groups that you can try as well. So the challenge for this phase, as I mentioned, is because you have the echo of attenuation eventually. This creates 2 sets of attenuation that you have to deal with at one time. The force and verve is obviously an issue, convert is an issue, but it's really the dual attenuations that cause the biggest problem. And to combat this, the method that we found worked best is to essentially split the echo of attenuation location and the location of the boss as far apart as possible, and thereby somewhat allow the majority of our raid to not worry about dodging attenuation, at least for one of the bosses. And you'll see how that works in a little bit. But that's the general goal here. So you can see there the echo spawned, and the boss is now being moved to another location far away, so that the attenuations from each of them will not really cross over in any major way. So the timing and positioning of this phase is critical, especially with this strategy, or probably all of them really. So as soon as we begin the phase, we start bloodlusting to burning the boss down. And the goal here is to burn the boss. We're ignoring DPS on the echo. So we position the boss sort of near the entrance stairway. You can see there's sort of a green marker for that. And we have our tank, who's assigned to tanking Vizier during this phase, position him. Then our raid puts their backs to the south position relative to the boss for that first attenuation. Again, just like the second platform. Immediately following that attenuation, we get a force and verve. So everyone except your Vizier tank can be in a bubble for this. And then following the force and verve, 2 things happen simultaneously. You will get convert on 2 random players, so make sure your raid is close together somewhat. And you will also get the echo of attenuation that will spawn within about 10 yards of the location of the Vizier when the force and verve ends. The timing on this echo spawn is always the same. It will spawn as soon as that force and verve ends. Now, the important thing here with this strategy is because we want to separate the locations of the boss from the echo does not move at all. If you run away from it, it will do Song of the Empress and wipe you. But the boss will not do Song of the Empress, and you can run around with him as much as you want. So that timing is crucial here. So what's happening right now is our Paladin tank is with the raid, but as soon as that force and verve starts to cast, he's running away to the corner position where he wants Vizier to run to before the next attenuation is cast. So while force and verve is being channeled, he can run away, and the boss stays there channeling force and verve. As soon as force and verve ends, which it just did a moment ago, that echo spawns in that location where we want it. But meanwhile, the boss is running off to find the paladin tank, who's in the corner in the south of the room. Once he gets to that position, about 5 seconds later, the boss will attenuate. As soon as that attenuation begins from the boss, the paladin then takes off again, going to the other corner. In this case, it's the one that the raid is in right now on the screen, which is to the east. From this position, you can see that while a few discs do enter this area, most of them will dissipate by the time they get over here. So this makes it about the maximum distance we can get from that echo and his attenuation. From this point forward, we just rotate back and forth between those two corners, the south and the east corner. So you can see there we got our force and verve, and here comes attenuation. And you can see that we have to be positioned sort of toward the outside of the mouth of that corner so that we don't get blocked in by attenuation. We're also having to dodge attenuation discs from the echo that are occurring, but it's not too difficult. You just take your time and slowly make your way over to the south corner. And then our paladin tank goes to the very back, and we get in position and repeat this process back and forth until the fight is over. So it's actually quite simple in many regards. And it's by far the most stable method we've found. Now, the other aspect to this is that we have, of course, our monk tank and our holy paladin that have to remain outside dealing with the echo. And this is far trickier. It's a much more difficult task. So as I mentioned, the echo stays stationary, and because of this, the tank especially has to weave their way through the attenuation discs so that they are meleeing, or at least in melee range, about a second or so after the attenuation ends. So that can be quite tricky. So our monk tank is more mobile than our paladin tank, so that's why he is on the echo in this final phase. So you can do things like Transcendence Teleport, or just roll for movement boosts, or just use Zen Meditation and float through them, that kind of stuff. And worst case scenario is, of course, the healer. Since they'll not be in range of pretty much anyone else in the raid, they can just sort of spam heal the tank and have him run through a few discs if needed. It's not ideal, but that's one option. So yeah, they did a really good job. Unfortunately, you can't really see it, but they're not able to run around the boss like you normally do because of the positioning. So they just sort of have to dodge the discs and then make their way forward to the echo as it's ending. Other than that, you can see that the basic strategy here for the raid is sort of like we were doing on the very first platform when we had the echo, force, and verve. But in this case, we also have the boss with inhale and exhale and all that. So we only get 2 bubbles for force and verve because the other 2 are near the echo, again, just like before. So with 8 players, we have to have 2 players stand out. So because we have to do this frequently, basically every time we run back and forth, we actually have a rotation of DPS players that stay out for force and verve. So we're using our Shadow Priest with Dispersion. He can do every other. And then we also have our Mage with Cold Snap for back-to-back ice blocks. So we basically have our Shadow Priest do one, then our Mage do the next, then our Shadow Priest, then our Mage, then our Shadow Priest. And by then, the boss better be dead or, we're terrible. So that was the basic plan, and it worked great. And then, of course, our Paladin tank is outside as well. That's the other person. So there you can see our Mage, Bloomy, is just chilling. And also our Paladin, who stood in a green orb and got destroyed. So, yeah, like I said, there's a number of mistakes in the footage here, but strategically, everything is sound. And so you can kind of take what we learned and go from there. So I think that covers just about everything. It's a pretty difficult fight. And again, this last phase is where everything comes together. Oh, I mentioned there are a few other strategies I'd talk about. So one that we tried for a while that looked promising was to basically force the echo to be our main DPS target. So the strategy works similar to what you see here, where we would spawn the echo at a faraway location, have our Vizier tank run off so that attenuation was far away, and then we'd burn the echo down. The thinking being that once the echo's gone, then it's just like a regular phase 3 in normal difficulty. You know, there's not much to worry about. It's pretty simple. In reality, that proves more effort than it's worth, because you still have to dodge attenuations out in the middle of the room here. And because you cannot move the echo, it means that DPS have a much more difficult time actually getting in range to attack between the dodging of two sets of attenuation, regardless of positions, because you just can't move the boss and the echo far enough away in this room to only have to deal with one attenuation. Furthermore, because of the timing of attenuations, you can't actually safely just do a circular pattern around the echo, because you'll have attenuation discs from the boss, wherever he might be, hitting you in the back and getting in the way. So that method would work, and it would have worked if we just stuck with it, but this turned out to be much more stable, and as you can see, it's a lot easier to manage once you get things going. The other thing we tried is sort of stacking the boss and the attenuation in the center, and similarly just burning the attenuation down. The advantage to this is that depending on your timing, you can actually do a circular pattern for attenuations in both cases, because while they're back to back, they're not crossing over. So you basically do a full circle for the boss attenuation, then you do a full circle for the echo's attenuation. The issue here is force and verve and charm. So while that might work when attenuations are cast back to back, eventually they get off after the first set. And from that point forward, you know, you're standing in force and verve bubbles while the echo's attenuating or whatever it is, and it's really chaotic. So all in all, I think this is the best method, but you're welcome to try whatever you'd like, and it's a pretty challenging fight, but that should cover Vizier. So good luck, and thanks for watching.